Hey everybody, I'm Angie Larson and I get to serve as the executive pastor here at Calvary, and I'm so honored that you are worshiping with us today. Today we're in our final week of a worship series that we've called A Weary World Rejoices. Let's be really honest, there has been a lot that have made us weary this year, made us feel like we're carrying heavy burdens or we have heavy hearts. We're just plain made us tired and kind of burned out. Today, we're actually going to talk about joy. So how do you find joy in a world that wears us down? How do we find joy in a weary world? So stick with us as we explore that question. Welcome to church.
Can I read?
So much excitement, so much joy. Are you guys ready for Christmas? No pressure, but for those of you who don't know, Christmas is this week. The expectation of kids, time crunch for parents and grandparents, and all the preparations. I have one present wrapped. Yep, one. I have a lot of work to do this week. Christmas is coming. It's just around the corner. But before we get to Christmas, I want to tell you a story. 2 years ago, my sister Emily, she invited me and my family out to her house in Colorado to celebrate my nephew Brahms's dedication. And as we made plans to go out to Colorado for the weekend, my sister called and she said to me, she said, "Hey Angie, would you and your family like to go see a concert at Red Rocks while you are out here in Colorado?" And if you've been to Red Rocks, you know that Red Rocks is this beautiful, beautiful natural amphitheater, big amphitheater that has huge performers, and it's right in the foothills of Colorado. Performers like the Beatles and Jimi Hendrix and Sonny and Cher and Carole King and U2 and Dave Matthews Band have all performed here at Red Rocks. And now they continue concerts, modern bands like the Revivalists or Trampled by Turtles. I mean, Red Rocks is the place to see a concert if you are a concert goer. I'm told that Nolan here on our staff has gone to Red Rocks 10 times to see the same band over and over and over again. So when my sister asked me if I wanted to go see a concert at this elite venue, I was over the moon. I was so excited. It was bucket list kind of stuff. And I said, of course. Are you kidding me? I absolutely want to go see a concert at Red Rocks while I'm out in Colorado. I said, so what are we going to see? And it's at this point where my sister hesitated. She said, we're going to go see Kids Bop Live. Yeah, Kids Bop Live. For those of you who are unfamiliar with Kids Bop Live, it goes like this. They take all the modern songs that you hear on the radio, and then they change the lyrics to make them kid appropriate. And then they have them all sung by 11-year-olds so that moms and dads can listen to the songs that they want to listen to without worrying that their kids are getting some bad content. And so I agree that Kids Bop Live is probably a good thing for most families. But here is my experience with Kids Bop. Kids Bop came out in 2001, the same year that my oldest daughter, Mackenzie, was born. And so throughout her childhood, these Kids Bop beats were just going through our house on repeat over and over and over again. And by the time my daughter, Mackenzie, got to elementary school, I just couldn't take it anymore. I just took all of the Kids Bop CDs out of our house and got rid of them because I couldn't handle hearing these songs over and over and over again on repeat. I mean, I love and respect you all who like Kids Bop songs in your house, but on this one, we're going to have to agree to disagree. I just cannot do it. And my sister Emily, she knew this very, very well when she baited me with the Red Rocks thing and then told me about the Kids Bop Live concert. And Emily knew what she had in mind when she had this idea that we'd all go together with our kids in Colorado having this fun little family adventure. And so when I heard her say Kids Bop Live and I responded with silence on the other end of the phone, she said quickly, "I already bought your tickets." Yeah, what a conniving little sister I have, even in her 30s. And I thought, oh, okay, great. So we are in our final week of our worship series called A Weary World Rejoices. And we've talked very frankly this past month about the weariness that I think that we all feel, that the whole world feels during these last couple of years. There's been so many things that have happened in the past 2 years. It's like having to listen to Kids Bop on repeat over and over again. And at some point, you just don't know if you can take it anymore. We don't know if we can endure one more thing in our lives, one more political argument out there, one more piece of bad news, one more friend who finds out that they have cancer, one more quarantine, one more COVID variant. It's all just plain too much. And we're weary and we're tired. Let's be honest, I think that we're all sort of just waiting for the next wave of something terrible to happen. It's like we've had this collective global trauma and we're all expecting that there's something bad just around the corner, something that's lurking around, ready to threaten us, ready to attack us at any moment. And so we spend a lot of energy trying to mentally prepare for it. And it's an honest self-defense mechanism. We watch social media and we scroll through waiting to see what might happen in our neighborhoods or in our schools. We monitor the news for any shortages or things that we need to maybe quickly go out and get so we can get them before anyone else can. And we rehearse in our own heads of the things that we are going to say to those people at our holiday gatherings so that we can be ready with that witty comeback. And while we're spending all this energy mentally gaming up for this weary world, on the other side of this, there's this voice in our society that's been around for a long time, this voice that says that we need to make Christmas the happiest time of the year. And kudos to those of you who feel that kind of energy, those of you who are kind of like Buddy the Elf, who for those of you who are just bubbly and perky and excitable and joy-filled all the time and you just can't contain it. Now, if this describes you, just go ahead and get a cup of coffee during this message because you've already got the point. In fact, I envy you. I wish that I felt that kind of happy, that kind of joy all the time. But here's the thing, too. I don't think that I'm alone as the only one trying to wish for this. Reality is that joy is just actually a really difficult emotion. Joy is especially hard when you are weary, when things in your life have been difficult, like they have been for most of us these past couple of years. Now, I want to make a distinction. Joy is different than happiness. I think we often confuse and intermix them, but I want us to gain some clarity about this today. First, let's talk about happiness. Happiness is what happens on the days like Christmas, when you have this heightened emotional state, like when you open a present and it's exactly what you wanted, and for a moment you're super happy. You're screaming at the top of your lungs and you're jumping around. Or happiness is like your wedding day when you finally got to commit to that person that you have been Twitter-pated with for the past couple of years. Or happiness is like the day that you retire, when you give up those long hours at the office. Here is how happiness is defined. Happiness is an emotional state characterized by feelings of satisfaction, contentment, and fulfillment. Happy is temporary. Happy is a feeling. And we all know that feelings, they come in 1 minute and then they're gone the next. The present that you get on Christmas is awesome until it becomes outdated or broken, or your marriage is perfect until it's hard, or your retirement is great until you don't know how to spend all of your time. Happiness is great, don't get me wrong, but it just doesn't last. I want you to imagine with me a tree. Happiness is like the fruit of the tree. It's like the fruit of the experience. The thing about fruit, though, fruit depends on the season, whether it's ripe or it's not ripe, whether it received enough nourishment or enough water or enough sunshine. Sometimes life gives us seasons of happiness, gives us plenty of fruit, but then there are other times where life is maybe a little bit sour, a little bit bitter, or you're in a season of drought or dormancy. But joy is different, and that's what I want to talk to you about today. Joy, it's more like the roots of the tree. It's like underneath the surface, anchoring the whole thing to the ground. No matter what's going on, whether it's a drought or rain or a snowstorm, whether life is experiencing these tough times or great times, joy is something that anchors us into a root system. Joy is defined as this. Joy is gratitude rooted in grace, no matter the circumstances. Joy is when we are aware of God's grace in our lives, not necessarily when we feel it, but when we are rooted deeply in it. When we are rooted in the promises of God, when life's storms comes, things like pandemics or diagnosis or stress and worry or expectations or school bullies or gossip or financial strains or relationship turmoil or grief or the weight of our mistakes or bad end of the semester grades, or when all of these storms come, we remain rooted in God's good grace, rooted in God's promise, rooted in the depth of God's love. Now, the Greek word for joy, it looks like this. It's pronounced rapha. And it's used over 200 times in the Bible. Rapha, it means inner gladness, rooted gladness. Rapha is the root word for joy, rejoice, or delight. So I want to wonder with you today why I think joy, why I think rapha is actually the most vulnerable, most difficult experience for us to accept that we have. I think joy is much harder than happiness. I mean, how many of you want joy in your life? Yeah, I think that we all do. We want it so bad. And so we want it so bad because of it. We do these two things. When we want joy so bad, we either one, we try to force joy into our life, or two, then we're actually kind of afraid to feel it. First, we try to force it. We try to say to ourselves, today I am going to choose joy. And okay, it works for a little while. We tell ourselves that things are going to be great and it's all kind of awesome, and we just kind of toxic positivity ourselves and force ourselves into these joyous moments. We put joy on our to-do list and we fake it till we make it. And honestly, sometimes it occasionally sort of works. We put a song on the radio and we sing it super loud with ourselves, and we find ourselves feeling good for a minute. But forcing it doesn't really last, though, because it's just happiness. It's just the fruit of the tree. It's just emotion. But when joy, actual joy, happens to us, when joy comes to us, when joy comes our way, it's almost like we're afraid to experience it. We're afraid to take it in and let it do something with us, let it change us. So instead we kind of try and control it. Author and researcher Brene Brown talks about joy coming into our lives as this difficult experience. And she calls this foreboding joy. She writes in her book, joy is actually one of the most vulnerable experiences that we can have as people, because scarcity and fear drive foreboding joy. We're afraid that the experience of joy won't last, or that there won't be enough, or that the transition to disappointment or whatever's in store for us next will be too difficult. We've learned that giving into joy is at best setting ourselves up for disappointment, and at worst inviting disaster. And as we struggle with the worthiness issue, do we deserve our joy, given our inadequacies and imperfections? And what about the starving children in a war-ravaged world? Who are we to be joyful? Who are we to be joyful with all the stuff going on in our world? Who are we to be rooted in grace and gratitude? Who are we to experience beauty and light? Who are we to rejoice? Friends, here's the amazing thing. This is what Christmas is all about how joy comes to us, how joy roots us in the first place. This is the story of how joy comes into the world. In those days, Caesar Augustus issued a decree that a census should be taken of the entire Roman world. This was the first census that took place while Quirinius was governor of Syria. And everyone went to their own town to register. So Joseph also went up from the town of Nazareth in Galilee to Judea to Bethlehem, the town of David, because he belonged to the house and line of David. He went there to register with Mary, who was pledged to be married to him and was expecting a child. And while we were there, the time came for the baby to be born, and she gave birth to her firstborn, a son, and she wrapped him in cloths and placed him in a manger because there was no guest room available for them. And there were shepherds living out in the fields nearby, keeping watch over their flocks at night. And an angel of the Lord appeared to them. The glory of the Lord shone around them, and they were terrified. But the angel said to them, "Do not be afraid. I bring you good news that will cause great joy for all the people. Today, in the town of David, a Savior has been born. He is the Messiah, the Lord." There's that word again, chara. The result of Jesus being born is joy for all people. And not just joy, but great joy. This event, this baby, this Messiah, this Jesus coming into the world is what roots all people to God. Jesus is what connects all people to the awareness of grace, to the knowledge of the depth of God's love for us, to the understanding of what God is willing to do to show us how much we are worthy of it. To show you who you are to be joyful. Who are you to experience joy? You're God's beloved. You are rooted to Christ. And this is what Jesus came for. So much great joy. So no matter what is going on in your life, even if you can't let yourself feel it, experience it, or enjoy it, but you are rooted in it. You are part of God's great joy because God's great joy came for all people. The Apostle Paul understood what it meant to experience the joy found in Jesus that the angels were all talking about, what it meant to feel rooted in God's grace no matter what the circumstances were. The Apostle Paul, he was in prison, and he was in prison for a long time. And within weeks of his execution, he continued to share the grace and love of God that he experienced through the person of Jesus. And he was in the worst situation of all, but he still experienced joy. And Paul, he teaches us how we can experience joy too. Paul writes these words right in the depths of prison. "Rejoice in the Lord always." I will say it again, rejoice. Do not be anxious about anything, but in every situation, by prayer and petition with thanksgiving, present your requests to God. And the peace of God, which transcends all understanding, will guard your hearts and your minds in Christ Jesus. I'm not saying this because I am in need, for I've learned to be content whatever the circumstances. I know what it is to be in need, and I know what it is to have plenty. But Paul, right here, says, "But I have learned the secret of being content in any and every situation. Whether I'm well-fed or hungry, whether I'm living in plenty or in want, I can do all of this to him who gives me strength." Here's the secret that Paul shares with us. Because of Jesus, God has got you in all of it, in all of your entire life. God has got you when you are overwhelmed with the stress of the season. God's got you when your doctor tells you the bad news. God has got you when your kids only sleep a couple of hours and you have a full day of work the next day. God has got you when your bills pile up. God has got you when your spouse disappoints you. God has got you when you aren't sure what direction to take next in your life. God has got you when your loved one goes into hospice. And God has got you when your family drives you crazy at Christmas time. God has got you when fear and anxiety and depression sneak into your thoughts and take over. God has got you when the weight of your mistakes burden you with shame. God has got you rooted. So even in the midst of all these things, even in the midst of the vulnerable, crazy, messy circumstances that this life throws at us, we can still have and experience great joy. Joy, gratitude rooted in grace, no matter the circumstances. So I did agree to go to Kids Bop Live. Please hear, I'm not comparing my suffering at Kids Bop Live to Paul's suffering in any way, but indeed it was difficult. I went because my whole family was going, and I love my family. There's nothing I wouldn't do for them, including go to Kids Bop Live at Red Rocks. So I went with my 3 siblings and all of our spouses and all of our children, and we arrived to Red Rocks, and the kids, they were so excited. They were just bouncing off the walls. And we were there for about 3 seconds before my children asked me if they could buy a $45 fluorescent green t-shirt, and I was like, no. But then we went and we found our seats, and there were thousands and thousands of kids screaming in the hot Colorado sun. And the opening song started, and 4 11-year-olds came out with their microphones dressed in glittery outfits, and all of a sudden, these thousands of kids in this amphitheater stared at the stage in amazement. They were mesmerized. And I didn't watch the stage. Instead, I stared at the kids. I stared at my kids and my nieces and my nephews, and I watched them sing and dance their hearts out. And as I stared at them, I couldn't look away. I couldn't help but see the joy that they were experiencing, and then their joy, it became mine. And I became overwhelmed with this feeling of how lucky I am to be the mom and the aunt to these little people. I mean, check out my niece, aptly named Grace, and her experience here at Red Rocks, where she is just dancing and jamming to nothing other than Kids Bop Live. This Christmas, as we stare into the manger, we can realize what kind of gift this is. What kind of great joy enters into our lives and roots us in grace no matter the circumstances going on in our lives. May we see that gift, that baby wrapped in swaddling cloths and lying in a manger, and may we feel it. May we squeal in excitement. May we shake in awe. May we totally freak out in gratitude. May we dance the happy dance and weep happy tears. May we jump for joy for what God has done for all people through Jesus Christ, born in a manger. Merry Christmas, everyone.
Shining, it is the night. shall break, for the slave is our brother, and in his vein all oppression shall cease. Sweet hymns of joy in grateful chorus raise we, let all within us praise his holy name. Christ is the Lord. All praise his name forever. His evermore proclaim his power and glory evermore proclaim. On your knees, oh, hear the angel voices. Oh, night divine, when Christ was born. Oh, night divine, oh, night
Thank you so much for joining us for worship today. Please join us in praying the Lord's Prayer. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, and the power, and the glory, forever and ever. Amen.
Hey everybody, thanks so much for joining us for worship today. I hope it has brought you some joy rooted in the promises of God through the baby Jesus Christ. If you're someone who's new to Calvary, we would love for you to join our email list. You can do this easily on our website, www.calvaryalex.org, and click on the button that says, I want to sign up for emails. We found that this is the easiest way for us to share the message of all the things that God is doing through Calvary here with you. And we would love for you to join us for Christmas with Calvary. You can find all of our worship times on our website, www.christmaswithcalvary.com. We are excited to have 5 worship services here at our building, as well as offer you one online. After the Christmas season, we are excited to start a new worship series here at Calvary that we're calling Asking for a Friend. Sometimes there are those questions about faith that you're just kind of afraid to ask. You're kind of nervous, so then you just sort of ask for a friend even though they're your own questions. And we've asked a bunch of people what the toughest questions they have about faith. Questions like, why do bad things happen to good people? And how do I reconcile both faith and science? And so this January, we're going to take on these big questions of faith in a real honest and open way. I hope that you'll join us either in person or online. And as we close our time together, we're going to close with a time of offering. We're so grateful for your generosity. Please know that Calvary is making a huge difference in this community and beyond because of your giving. There are 4 ways that you can give, and they're on your screen. The first is that you can go to calvaryalex.org and click on the button that says Give. The second is that you can choose to Venmo us with the Venmo address on your screen. Third is you can write a check and drop it in the mail to 605 Douglas Street, Alexandria, Minnesota, 56308. Or the fourth is that you can call the church with the number on your screen and we'll help you figure it out. Thank you for your generosity. Go and have some joy today.